So what's the motivation for publishers to connect to that? Do they understand that this would generate for them more revenues? What are they, how are they looking? What's their perspective on that?
It is. I think that most of the one of the biggest concern that publisher has is ad monetization. Eventually, they rely on this revenue to represent like a decent percentage of the revenue, and the shift away from the third party cookies makes it harder to deliver a personalized high value for ads. And without an alternative like ID5, it's harder. And ID5 eventually is a solution that it's not intrusive at all. And it helps us, Anzu and others, to provide better audience targeting for them eventually with higher CPMs. So I think that like
They
for them,
understand the value.
they do understand the value, definitely.
Welcome to another episode of ChatGBD, the podcast and video about games and advertising and media and everything in between. Today with me, we have two wonderful co-hosts. Sharon, let's start with you.
Hello, hello. I'm Sharon. I'm the growth management team lead.
Hello, I'm Idan. I'm the solution programmatic lead.
And my name is Guy. I'm the EVP of Revenue Operations and Supply at Anzu. We're always excited to talk about what's happening in the market today and overall maybe talk about some, curiosities. This week, we just ended DICE in Vegas, a big event for video game executives. A lot of good news are coming out of that. And GDC is a month from now, and we're going to do everything again, just in higher scale in San Francisco. It's going to be a very exciting event because this year, more publishers, more developers, more advertisers will be there at scale. We also had, I think, the Trade Desk CEO came up last week with some statement. You know about it?
Yeah, so in the last Tradest earning call, Tradest underperformed a bit, and many people came out saying it was very concerning. And the Tradest CEO posted a very detailed post talking about the earning call and the discussion following the earning call, basically layering out the trade strategy for the next year, trying to put more focus on the performance and the new markets that have high potential, such as um, voice, um, gaming, and other new interesting markets such as CTV. It's very interesting and it's very exciting for us, especially where we are planning on adding support for clicks, and it's pretty aligns with our strategy of like offering non-intrusive clicks that from one side doesn't interfere with the user experience, but with the other side can show high performance for both users and advertisers trying to maximize their revenue. So
Trade is really the backbone, right, for a lot of what's happening online on programmatic ads, right? They're the biggest next, I mean, after Google, I guess, and Facebook.
So I think recently in the past year, Plavin showed a lot of value in the gaming market, and in generally in like conversions, performance market, and MarTech, and it looks like it uh, won over Trade Desk in the Q4 of 2024. And this is why this post came into air. So as Plavin shows, Plavin also did a strategic change. They are basically selling all their like
Big business.
gaming business.
$900 million,
Yeah.
almost $1 billion.
Insane.
Yes.
And focusing only in AdTech gaming. And it puts Trade Desk in a place that they need to show more performance and more value to their publishers and
They're really
advertisers.
competing head to head these days, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty immense. I mean, they're not doing well. Uplavin, though, their share jumped 30 points a few days ago. After that, after the announcement that they're selling, nobody knows, today, who's the buyer, but I'm sure we'll know about it in a matter of a couple of weeks or so. It's going to be exciting. We work with some of the publishers that are under the Uplavin umbrella. I remember when they announced Lion, which was a big shock in the AdTech market. How come an ad network owns a publisher? The conflicts, the CPM, the data that they'll be exposed to as a publisher and nobody else. Down the street, we got Iron Source, and back in the day, it was a big hoo-ha.
Yeah.
Yeah. You remember that you were in wildlife when that happened, right?
When what?
When Lion was introduced by
I think so, maybe. Not sure. But yeah, it was a surprise. And then like a few years later, we see that they own so many other studios.
It became a big business
It
for
became a
them.
big business, yeah.
Yeah.
Not the main one, but
Yeah.
a big business, yeah.
Iron Source, a year and a half into that, open up Supersonic games, right?
Yeah.
Based on the Supersonic brand that they already owned, and made a big business for them. So quite a lot of news. Uploving Trade Desk. We got the events on the game side with DICE. Q1's always busy. Everybody is either closing their financial year or starting their new year with a big bang and, try to roadmap to the market overall what's about to happen. Over the last few podcasts, we always talked about privacy and want to talk more about that today. User privacy, the age-old conflict between advertisers that really want to run campaigns that are specific to certain audiences, to certain users. I had a good friend calling me a couple of weeks ago saying, I have a list of 300 people. Can I advertise only to them? So that not anymore, right? It used to be. But, brands really are willing to pay more to get to a very specific audience versus publishers versus the media that needs to adhere to certain rules. And one of them, big thing of that is the privacy of the people who watch the media, play the game, watch CTV. And a lot of rules that over the last decade really became very extremely prominent and honestly, I think scary, right? When you, again, both wearing both hat as a publisher back in the day and today at Anzu, I'm sure you've seen that, kind of how scared are publishers from exposing players to information that they were not willing to do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that like before it was like it was like an intrusive methods, and today we have the solutions like the ones that we're gonna talk today. And I think it's one of the hottest topics at the moment, the identify a solution in digital advertising. Yeah, let's dive into it.
Yeah.
You want
I mean,
to start by
just even before we go into the specifics, I know that just the exposure that media companies have is significant. I don't know. I mean, if you heard about those stories where the government of France or somebody else was actually suing a publisher, Idan?
Yeah, so we know that one big SSP, for example, got a very big fine because of non-compliance for the GDPR and the information that they shared with parties that they weren't allowed to share. And those fines by both the GDPR and the US government are very, very significant, alongside deductions from DSPs that following that. Yeah, so it's a hot topic. Everybody wants to, for one side, comply with all the regulations, and from the other side, to maximize the revenue. And it's a struggle to do both in the same time.
So from a publisher perspective, it really starts with showing players, right, what is going to happen with data that's relevant or being created by them, and having the players agree to those terms and conditions and all that, right?
Yeah.
It's called consent,
CMP.
consent
Yes.
management platforms, right?
Yeah, and like I think all the discussion about the CMP started like a year ago. Once Google, like it became like the hot topic a year ago when Google decided to don't know what to say, to like
Introduce.
yeah, to introduce publishers the old CMP thing. And then they came with their solution, which is free. And then we saw that most of the publishers really choose their tool since it's free and since it's Google, obviously. And yeah, and then it became like a hot topic.
If it's free, somebody is paying, right? I mean, we're paying with the data, right?
Yeah.
Somehow to Google.
Yeah.
So Google gave consent systems for free.
Yeah.
They're obviously on the flip side exposed to all the data because they are integrated into these apps and websites and all that. And consent is different if I'm playing from Germany, France, from UK, from US, maybe per state. I may see different element, right? Then
So first of all, on your CMP, either it's by Google or by any other company, the publisher sets up to what his users are going to consent to. And there are different types of consent options. For example, the publisher can, the first mandatory field is to allow advertisers to collect information from the user, such as IP and advertiser ID and other pieces of information.
Mhm.
And then there are like options, what can the advertiser do with this information? For example, can the advertiser then run retargeting campaigns? If the publisher allows it, he needs to check it out from the checklist. If the advertiser is allowed to build profiles for those audiences and then target against those audiences, this is something that also the publisher decides in a CMP, and he needs to check those boxes in to then allow the advertisers to do that based on the current regulation. And for ad business, it's very important because advertisers won't do things that are not allowed as part of the consenting per user they are seeing.
So all that information, basically the player is choosing. Most of them don't treat anything, so they say accept all. But some of them can go in and say reject all or accept a few things, and all that information eventually goes into the advertiser, right? So Anzu as a platform, right, gets the consent information if there's any consent, right? And what does that mean to us? It means that we can advertise more, that we can, what can we do with that information?
So Anzu gets the string, and assuming that Anzu can, the string says that Anzu can collect information and pass it along. In that case, Anzu can pass along this string to the advertisers that Anzu works with, to the DSPs and SSPs Anzu works with. And if this consent string allows, for example, to do retargeting and to create audience profiles, then this information then serves DSPs and SSPs Anzu works with to do those stuff. When a campaign running from the advertiser side, an advertiser usually says, I want to do a retargeting campaign, I want to do audience-based campaigns, and if these settings are set on the campaign, this campaign won't run on inventory that doesn't allow it, basically.
A lot of the campaigns could be brand awareness or performance. When, as an example, when a publisher wants to buy, more users, they would usually go after these audiences, right? That perform better. They can do retargeting on some events, right? I mean, I know that you haven't done user acquisition, but publishers a lot of time would say, "Oh, because they played other similar games. Let's try to, find that audience specifically, run a campaign with them. The, users would convert better or may convert better and try this new game or come back to another game." Right? Um, Overall, when you have that level of detail, just player or a user can cost more. Advertisers would pay a higher CPI or CPM, right? And this is why there's such a sort of an urgency to do that. And I understand, like 5 years ago, all that wasn't there. We knew each player exactly who that player is, right? If they played what they downloaded, we could really target players back in the day, right? If you experienced with that, did you have any exposure to that?
I mean,
Wild,
I remember that I think 2 years ago there was a change from Apple that was major, that had a major effect on Meta as well. Um, right?
Yeah.
It was like 2 years ago, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken. Um, so yeah, I think this was the flip. And now we have some solutions for that.
so
Other solutions.
in attribution, the entire world of attribution changed because of that. I remember user acquisition agencies and publishers running their own user acquisition really needed to shift over a few weeks a model where, again, they knew exactly who they were targeting and buying, how much it would cost them, all that world of hyper casual to something that's more around, let's say, audiences, right? Something that's wider. In that wider space, now we have new technologies that are able to understand not by the user, but by the audiences, right? And one of them is ID5, right? And ID5 is not a newcomer. I mean, they've been around for how long?
For a couple of years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what is ID5? That's a new hot name.
So ID5 is currently the most popular identity graph in the AdTech industry. And basically, they collect data from publishers and then build in a graph that represent audiences. And then they allow advertisers to target against those audiences. So, for example, if I have some code of a brand and I want a specific audience to be targeted, I can sign up with ID5, create an audience on ID5, target it on my DSP, and then on the other side, if I'm a publisher, I can sign up with ID5 and allow ID5 basically to create audiences based off my inventory.
On the people that visit the app, the game, or the website.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's in big groups, right?
Yes. So currently, based off the regulation, just like in a very rough explanation, you are not allowed to target specific people, but you can like target a group of 5,000 people from which you cannot individually identify the users. So, for example, if I want to target income and a place, I need to choose a specific regularity that will allow me to get to 5,000 people. But from those 5,000 people, I won't be able to identify the specific person I'm aiming for.
So for ID5 to succeed, so to speak, they need to be connected or integrated with a lot of publishers to begin with. They need to have a lot of data, right? And we've asked some of the publishers working with us.
Yeah.
Right?
So we started like 2-3 months ago to have conversation with publishers regarding this topic. And we saw that many of them are already worked with ID5 in other formats, in rewarded, interstitial banners. So it was easy. But we did need to have some educational materials for publishers that did not met with ID5 yet. But we like eventually we saw that most of them did work with ID5 already. So
Yeah.
this is some good news.
That's good. So you just needed to extend whatever they've done with them,
Yeah,
or
like
just
we basically just need like an ID. It's ID. Very easy. Nothing like from tech perspective. Very easy
right.
implementation. Yeah.
And as a platform, when we connect to ID5, what do we send them? What are we risking, or what are we exposing?
So basically, we are sending them the same information that we are sending SSPs and DSPs in the bitstream. So we are sending them the IP, the advertiser ID, and all the standard fields of like whether it's display or video, what is the size of the placement, and all of the other standard fields. So it's nothing special or unique, and it's the same that we are passing to all the programmatic.
Are we sending them stuff and they send us back, which we send forward, or
Yeah.
are we checking with them or building with them?
So the integration with ID5 is we are sharing with them the information that we're going to share anyway in the bitstream. And if they have they identify the user, they are returning to us a user ID, which is also encrypted. So we don't know what does it mean and cannot identify this user. And this encrypted ID, we're passing in the bitstream to our programmatic partners, identified as ID5 ID.
And that connects to a certain profile, that those audiences that we're talking about.
Exactly. And if you are partnering with ID5 on the demand side, you can pass, a DSP can pass to ID5 the encrypted ID, and then they get from the ID5 the information of this audience, which kind of audience is it, and all of its parameters.
So let's take kind of two examples. If I'm an US insurance company and I want to target young couples who are about to buy their house and they need a house insurance, right? Whatever, I set it up on my end. When it comes to us, we are sending that request or that profile to ID5, or is it more kind of per user? How does it work from there?
So we send to ID5 the regular information that is going to pass in the bitstream, which includes the IP and the advertiser ID. And then ID5 maps it on their side with their magic. And then the DSP, if he would get the ID of this user, he will send the ID and will get the information of the audience. It's a young couple looking to buy an apartment or an insurance or whatever.
Okay. And then grouping those to those larger audiences are done on our end and on the DSP end.
So everything is done on the DSP, and the only thing that we do is we send the bitstream information to ID5, and then we get an
Encrypt
ID.
the information and move it along.
Exactly.
All right. And hopefully we have those people in our audience.
Yes.
This is where we need a lot of different type of games to reach a lot of these different audiences. The same thing goes with more performance marketing advertising. So again, let's say I'm a publisher. I want to buy players that plays a lot of, let's say, casual games, puzzle games. Would that be the same case? I would run a CPI based campaign, for installations and
Yes.
verify that with ID5.
Yeah. So you can go create your audiences. And then if you're opted into ID5, you will be able to utilize them with the different tools that you are using to bring those audiences.
So what's the motivation for publishers to connect to that? Do they understand that this would generate for them more revenues? How are they looking? What's their perspective on that?
It is. I think that most of the one of the biggest concern that publisher has is ad monetization. Eventually, they rely on this revenue to represent like a decent percentage of the revenue, and the shift away from the third party cookies makes it harder to deliver a personalized high value for ads. And without an alternative like ID5, it's harder. And ID5 eventually is a solution that it's not intrusive at all. and it helps us, Anzu and others, to provide better audience targeting for them eventually with higher CPMs. So I think that like
They understand the value.
they do understand the value, definitely.
And how is, I mean, every time I say privacy and ID5 next to the doors of our legal department, I immediately hear a lot of noise and, faces are coming out of the door. So do publishers feel that they, let's say ad monetization teams, they feel they can make that decision, or they need to go to their legal and go through a lot of these processes when it comes to privacy to make sure that it's fine? Is it something smooth today, or legal have to be absolutely involved in every step of the way?
So eventually they do need to sign a contract. So we have to like move through the legal. But we did not like encounter any issue at the moment with any publishers. Like most of them really signed on it, and that's all. Um, and Idan answered them any questions they had. Um, yep.
How
Pretty
heavy?
easy.
That's good. I mean, how much of a heavy lifting it was on our end with legal and all that.
So I think building the partnership was a challenge to make sure the contract really reflects both the publisher's interest and the advertiser interest and makes sense. And I think from the publisher perspective, the main concerns they may have is to whom I'm integrating with. Is it a known partner? And as I said, ID5 is the most wide used identity graph in the world, and it is already working with like the biggest names in the market. Another thing that like a publisher needs to verify in any like identity related integration is, do the parties that the publisher is working with have like a data protection agreement with either the direct vendor that they're using or like with a third party. And this is something that is included as part of the offering. So we signed like data protection agreements with all of our partners that we are working with. And this is like something that is important in those type of integrations, and we are very strict about it. And when you can check that it's like a GDPR compliant company, it's compliant with all the California, Arizona, Mexico, and other countries' laws and regulations, and you have a data protection contract with them. If it checks all these boxes, you can say
For sure.
yeah.
Right. In 95, just to be fair, are not the only ones out there.
Right.
They may be the biggest, but who are the others?
Yeah, so there is another identity called LiveRamp, there is Panorama ID, there is Newstar ID, Hedron ID, a bunch of IDs.
The biggest, information you have, the more information you have, you become the biggest. And ID5 right now is the biggest of them all, as far as I understand.
Exactly.
Okay, this is amazing. I mean, you think you go out, you're going to make games, you're going to focus on making a wonderful user experience, something that people want to experience, come back to. Then you need to spend half of your time on legal stuff and privacy and bureaucracy. It really feeds a lot of legal and, sort of a lot of that overhead there. People really don't recognize how much of detail into the data, into the user care and experience is going there, let alone the game itself, the visuals and all that. Um, a lot of things to think about before you go to market if you don't want to get sued by any governments.
Yeah, I think that solution like ID5 will become essential for publishers who wants to maintain a strong ad revenue while respecting the user privacy eventually.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's quite enough for today. It's a long session, and there is a lot to talk about. So first of all, thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank Nir, our tech guy. Shout out to Maor, who's sitting under the weather today, and will return sometime soon. Again, hope you like this. If you like this, hit the subscribe, follow us. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify. You guys are going to be famous soon, probably. Hopefully see you before GTC. Thank you very much.